This is my group's ADA project. It was made by Christy Brennan, Caitlin Van Valkenburg, Julia Spinella, and Ryan Corrigan. The definition and history of the ADA is it was passed in 1990. It extended civil rights protection in all areas of life for individuals with disabilities. Within APE and sport community recreational facilities must be accessible and reasonable accommodations be made. Also, it develops and offers programs that allow individuals with disabilities to participate in PE and sport within the community. The definition of the 504 Rehabilitation Act is to ensure that individuals with a disability receive intended benefits of all educational programs and extracurricular activities that receive federal financial assistance, equal opportunity to attain the same results, gain the same benefits, or reach the same levels of achievements as peers without disabilities. So you might ask, how are these two different and how are they the same? They're different because Section 504 is specific to educational programs and extracurricular activities, meaning its benefits do not carry over outside of educational facilities. ADA covers areas of life beyond or following education, including employment, telecommunications, etc. ADA ensures that people with disabilities can thrive in public settings. So they're similar because both laws attempt to improve living conditions for individuals with disabilities to ensure equal access and promote inclusion within transportation and facility access in their respective areas.
So some of the key players when it comes to people and organizations within ADA and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act were Senator Tom Harkin, as he was a big advocate who championed ADA due to his connection to disability issues through his brother who was deaf. Senator Tom Harkin introduced ADA to the Senate as he delivered a speech using sign language in order to symbolize the bill's importance. Another important figure for ADA was Justin Dart, Jr., who was another disability rights advocate and the chairman of the President's Committee on Employment of People with Disabilities. Now, Justin Dart Jr. traveled across the country to collect stories and evidence of the discrimination that people with disabilities face, and he also co-founded the American Association of People with Disabilities, and through all of his work, he is known as the godfather of ADA. Another key figure was former President George H.W. Bush, as he passed the ADA law into effect on July 26, 1990, while publicly emphasizing the importance of ending discrimination against people with disabilities. Now, the National Council on Disability was a key player as they drafted and recommended the ADA, which basically laid the foundations for ADA by documenting the need for comprehensive civil rights legislation for people with disabilities. Now, when we get into the key players for Section 504, one of the ladies' names are Judy Heumann, as she was an activist who was also the co-founder of the Disability Rights Education and Defense Fund, which is also known as the DREDF. She had participated in Section 504 sit-ins, which eventually led to the signing of regulations for the Section 504 Rehabilitation Act. She fought for accessibility and played a crucial role in 1977 protests demanding enforcement of Section 504 Rehabilitation Act. Another key player was Ed Roberts, who was also known as the father of independent living movement, as he helped to change social views on disabilities while advocating for the passing of Section 504, as he promoted the importance for independent living for people with disabilities, which is also how he got his nickname. Now, an organization who played a key role was the Disability Rights Education and Defense Fund, who helped lead the fight for Section 504 to be enforced. Now, that is the same fund where Judy Heumann was the co-founder, so they kind of coincide. And lastly, Joseph Califano was responsible for signing health regulations that enforced Section 504 after he received a lot of public pressure.
Individuals who have physical or mental impairments that substantially limit one or more major life activities are covered under ADA. There has to be a record of these impairments, and the ADA covers a wide variety of disabilities, including physical, neurological, and cognitive disabilities. Mental health conditions are also covered by the ADA. and other conditions such as autism.
So what are the titles of the ADA? Title I of ADA, Employment, ensures people with disabilities have access to the same employment opportunities and benefits, along with reasonable accommodations for qualified employees. Title II of ADA, Public Entities and Public Transportation, protects people with disabilities from discrimination in public transportation and by state and local governments. Title III of ADA, Public Accommodation and Commercial Facilities, protects people with disabilities from public accommodations and commercial facilities, including businesses and nonprofits. Title IV of ADA, Telecommunications, ensures people with hearing and speech disabilities have access to telecommunication services by telephone and internet companies providing relay services and closed captioning. Reasonable accommodations are modifications or adjustments provided by an employer, public entity, or business to enable a person with a disability to perform essential job functions, access public services, or participate fully in society. An example of a reasonable accommodation in a workplace would be having a deaf employee and getting a sign language interpreter for them to be able to perform their job completely. Readily accessible accommodations are accommodations that can be easily reached and used by people with disabilities without too much difficulty. An example of a readily accessible accommodation is the addition of automatic door opening buttons on most doors of workplaces and public buildings.
There's two definitions that I would like to talk about. The first one being readily achievable. This is defined as an action that is easily accomplishable and able to be carried out without much difficulty or expense. This is in terms of removing barriers in public accommodations and commercial facilities to ensure accessibilities for people with disabilities. So an example of this could be adding ramps to entrances and exits, widening doorways so that it is more accessible to wheelchair users. Now, this is something that doesn't affect the regular public population, but it does help out people with disabilities. Now, my other definition is kind of on the opposite side. It's called the definition of undue hardship. Now, this could be defined as an accommodation that would be too expensive, disruptive, or extensive, and therefore would change how a business would operate. So a good example of this would be a wheelchair-bound employee requesting an elevator to be put into a store. Obviously, that is very costly, and that would probably disrupt the business because with the construction having to implement an elevator and be very, very expensive. So these are two good examples of opposite definitions, but very clear examples when it comes to how it could affect businesses and buildings and just public places, and how it could not affect one and just help out the whole community.
Groups who are exempt from the ADA include religious groups and organizations, private clubs, small businesses, and federal government agencies. An example of a group who is exempt from the ADA in a community would be a church who doesn't have a wheelchair ramp or wheelchair seating inside the church. The ADA has helped people significantly here in the United States by improving the lives of people with disabilities by increasing accessibility, protecting employment rights, expanding public transportation, improving communication access, and ensuring equal access to public services. A real-world example of the ADA helping improving the lives of people with disabilities in the United States is in 2016 when a Starbucks barista was having a communication barrier due to being deaf. Starbucks improved accommodations and had things such as ASL interpreters coming in, as well as improving their text-based ordering system. And after these accommodations were made by Starbucks, the deaf barista was able to succeed working their job successfully.